Today I have Mark Downie, who is a principal program manager at Microsoft working on Visual Studio. Mark, how are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me, Jesse.
I'm really glad to have you here. I'm eager to talk to you about AI within Visual Studio, how
Yeah.
you're implementing this from a developer point of view. I want to draw a distinction between AI assisting in the creation of code
Yeah.
and AI within an application.
Yeah.
And given your involvement in the Visual Studio team, I assume it's going to be a discussion about the first. How does AI help a developer write code?
Yeah. 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 We definitely have multiple approaches to this entire new era, environment we're creating. We did start this a long time ago when you think about what editing in line looked like and helping you with just this next line of code, maybe even just the next phrase or the next, if statement or the next do while statement. We then had multi-line suggestions. All this was AI driven. We didn't really talk about it like it was AI back then, but it really was. Obviously, now we're kind of moving into a more chat centered, and we have a whole team for the chat experiences that we want to have a whole conversation with. And then we also I'd say almost there's almost two other areas. We have the agent spaces now that we're kind of heavily investing in, and then we also have we have the integration to the IDE itself. So the IDE is becoming more aware of its own tools and maybe how you want to use them. And so, there's several areas we're putting a lot of investment into recently to kind of help the developer become even more productive.
Yes, I had Mads Christensen on, and he was talking about the IDE becoming more and more of a junior programmer side
Yeah.
by side.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So it's like you have a task in front of you. In Visual Studio, the way we kind of position this is as we kind of have a real good opinion about the way .NET developers and C++ developers should use the tool. So we've been honing these tools for years, and they're a suite of tools that we think developers tell us all the time are valuable to them. And so in this agent moment, we are saying these tools continue to be tools for you and your agent now. And you can think about it like if I were handing this to a junior dev and I was saying, hey, help me with this particular task. You're not just handing them and asking them to write code, but you can also ask them to help you do other things, whether that's debug an issue or you want maybe a junior dev who has some expertise with WinForms, or you have a junior dev who has some expertise with profiling. We think that that kind of approach can unlock some expertise that you probably necessarily might have to go to somebody else for, and that you can still go to them, but I think you can go to them with a bit more information and a bit more grounding now with the way tools and agents get used today.
And when the agent is doing its assigned task, is it doing that concurrent with other work that the developer is doing?
So you can. Our agent right now is essentially running the show for you. So our agent is kind of in charge, and it's kind of running the show. You do have we released back in April, I think it was the concept of the cloud agent. So I can start a remote Copilot coding session from the agent picker right in the Copilot chat, and that can open issues and produce a PR for you while I'm working on other things. So we do have the notion of do a thing for me while I continue. But with Visual Studio, right now, the kind of way we are positioned right now is that you work with the agent working for you right in front of you. It's essentially using the tools that you would typically use during your own debugging session on your behalf.
Okay. You guys have shipped an agent just about every month this year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I believe you've got plan and custom and cloud and
Yep.
debugger, and maybe you can help tell me how this all gets tied together.
Yes, yes. So again, the goal really is to up level you at every opportunity we can. We want to make you productive, and you're the center of this ultimately for us, from our perspective. There are folks with other ideas here, but our idea is that we want to make the human developer way more productive. And so right now, we kicked off, I think, back in February with the profiler and unit profiler agent and the unit test support. So what we typically talk to when we're talking to developer teams, we see, you know, somewhere between 5 and maybe 50 engineers in a team, and maybe one or two of them in even a 50 person team has the ability to use something like the profiler tool, which is designed to help you find bottlenecks in performance. And with the agent, we are finding a lot more people feeling empowered to go ahead and profile an application, to figure out, to add a unit test, to add a benchmark, and to measure for performance changes. And that kind of tool is just another, that agent is kind of just another tool in your toolbox, really. It's just helping you get familiar. What the two things that I really like about it is that it helps you not only find issues that you're not necessarily looking for, but if you are looking for something very specific, you can hone it to go after that thing. And yeah, you're right. So February we released that. We also in February released the WinForms Expert Agent. We got, in 2026 we are still having a lot of WinForm developers out there. They're a huge and active community, and so we've been providing this WinForm agent as a way to help with specialized guidance around the designing code, the designer, and modern .NET app patterns that follow the kind of WinForms expert techniques. And so we've been delivering, as you say, a steady cadence. Back in March, we released custom agents, which again, if you've got a bunch of agents sitting on your machine in, .github/agents, you may have agents that you've been using with the CLI. Well, now you can use them directly within Visual Studio. So we've been like this been steady drumbeat because folks are finding that they can get things done a lot faster when an agent is in use with them. And then on top of that, what was the other one we released? The Plan Agent, as you mentioned, last month was also released, where you can implement plans, you can save plans to a location, and that you can hand off to your agent to execute on your behalf. So yes, we've been kind of shoring up our agent kind of position, and I think we've got a really strong class. Certainly the debugger agent was really well received. That's another one we've been working on alongside the profiling agent. Debugging and diagnostics is my kind of was originally my main area. So we have a lot of developers who have some debugging skills, but not maybe taking advantage of all the tools that are available. And I think the debug agent really helps developers figure out which is the best tool to use in which scenario. So yeah.
Okay, let's do this. There are a number of them, and some of them are self-explanatory.
Yeah.
We talked about plan.
Yep.
You have one that just says agent.
So yeah, I can only assume you are talking about maybe the custom agents in that.
That must be that. Yes,
Yeah.
which we just spoke about.
Yeah.
Okay. And ask is when I just want to have a conversation with an agent. I get that.
Yeah.
You have one called Cloud.
Yeah, that's the Cloud Agent. That's the one where you select that. And this is where I kind of think about, I'm working on a task and I find an issue that's not quite related to the task I'm working on. And I say, gosh, I'd like to get that done right now. But maybe I don't want to switch branches or create a new branch, or, I don't want to switch around right now. That's where I would kind of kick in the the Cloud Agent, and I'd say, okay, hand you this unit of work, go away and do this for me, and come back a little bit later, and we can pick up on that later. But ultimately, I don't want to stop my train of thought and maybe the current agent I'm working on right now. And so I love that as the kind of way I can just keep working, but yet get something off my train of thought that was, necessarily kind of taking up too much space in my head. So yeah, I love the Cloud Agent. It's something that I think we've been really proud of because of the way that it allows you to kind of parallelize yourself. Yep.
So let me just understand. I'm working locally.
Yep.
And I'm in my branch, and I realize, I need to do this other thing.
Yep.
When I say to the Cloud Agent, go create for me XYZ, is that going off into Azure and doing work on its own? Is that what's happening with that?
Essentially, yeah, we're sending that to the cloud, and it's completely it's not working on my machine anymore. I'm handing it maybe an issue, or I'm describing an issue, and the work is actually occurring somewhere else. That's actually happening in the cloud on your behalf, and you get to kind of look at the results of that once it's finished.
Great.
Essentially,
And
so in the chat, you kind of got multiple threads are going on in terms of chats you're having, and each of those you essentially spinning up another thread of conversation, and that chat is going away. So you can go back to your thread that you were working on and kind of check in on that other chat, that other thread with the cloud, and the information is going to be happening. The actual work is going to be happening elsewhere.
great. And the only other one that I wanted to ask you about is modernize.
Right. Yeah. Modernize. The modernize. Yeah, that was from the .NET team, I believe. I don't have as much information as that on that one as maybe some of the other ones. But yeah, it's the fundamental. Actually, there was two. I think it was one from the .NET team and one from the C++ team. There's this app modernization concept where, let's assume for a second I am on an older version of MSVC, and I'm looking to upgrade. But there are some fundamental changes between this version and that version. The MSMVC, the kind of app modernization agent, is designed to help you assist you with any kind of upgrades that you might be working on. And same for .NET principally, where we're saying, yeah, that's the way we did it, in the older way, but now we kind of have a more there's a new canonical way of doing that particular task, and that would probably lead to better results, or maybe better usage of the .NET framework itself. So yeah, there's a bunch of features, not just necessarily agents, but prompts that are ready for you in various areas of the work you're doing. And again, that's why I say there's kind of almost three areas I think about this: the chat itself, there is using various tools within Visual Studio that may be agent amplified, and then there is chat agent, and then just within the IDE itself, we're kind of making sure we're providing opportunities to click that kind of starry looking thing to say, actually, I want a bit of help here. So, for example, if I'm creating a PR, one of the things I often struggle with is I'm about to create a PR, but what are all the check-ins I did to this branch? Like, what are all the things I did? But I want the PR to have a record of all those things, right? And so, what Visual Studio will do, you'll click on the little button. This isn't happening in the chat now. This is happening in the IDE itself. You'll say, actually, help me with the description of this thing. What are all the things that I checked in over the last 2 weeks to make this PR just right? That is a kind of a constant rub against me whenever I'm doing work. And that helps summarize that for you. You can look at it, accept it, and decide, yep, that makes sense. Oh, that thing I did 2 weeks ago is the thing I want to make sure is mentioned in the PR. So yeah, there's a lot of these little tools, shall we say, that are within the IDE that kind of help reduce your friction.
Gotcha. Okay. I note that you separate out plan as an agent as opposed to having each of the agents do their own planning.
Right. I think it's just the way, in essence, we are. It's kind of an acknowledgement of the way I think Visual Studio Code has kind of implemented this as well. That there is this .copilot/plans folder, and we need something that will go look at this and kind of create plans and create a kind of a handoff for us, because that whole planning stage is a kind of it's a big stage in and of itself. It's like, I am saying I'm not doing a thing at the moment, but I want to think about this thing that I want to do. I want to improve my security posture on the login page. Well, before I even get to work, there's a whole way of thinking and approaching this particular problem that I want to execute on, long before I make a actual code change. The iterative process of deciding what's going to go into the change is a skill of itself. It's a set of of useful ways to think. So when we have that kind of scenario, we typically refer to it as an agent with a set of skills and a particular set of tools, maybe, that make that agent work. And so planning kind of fits in the way we think about it. So it's designed to help you collaborate in a very particular kind of way. And so again, I kind of trying to think about this as an agent with a set of skills specific to that agent and a set of tools specific to that agent. And so in some ways, we could really just say it's another set of skills, but in reality, that's how we kind of are thinking about this: agent first, skills, tools associated with the agent.
I want to come back to skills and tools for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
before we leave plans, your plans are markdown files in a given folder.
Yeah.
And are they read by the other agents, or is there some intervention between them, or how does that work?
Oh, right. Yep. So there's a specific folder that the planning agents write to. It's in your user profile.github/plans. And yeah, that's a handoff point essentially. So everything, once you've come to your conclusions, it gets written to a markdown file in that folder. And that's essentially where your actual agent, who's going to do some work for you now, picks up on that that markdown file and continues the task. And so essentially, the handoff point becomes the .copilot/plans folder.
And so there's no human intervention here. This becomes the context for whatever agent you're giving it to.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. It now has a sense of the thing you're trying to execute. You've walked through this. You've kind of built up all the context that some downstream agent will need, and at that point, you're kind of just executing. You may even be hands off at that point and letting the agent run.
I like hands off. That's always good.
Yeah.
If we get any more hands off, we're going to have to find something else to do.
But. Well, I think it's an interesting philosophical question. I think there's two sets of developers out there. I think there's some people who love the craft of developing and they want to write the lines of code. And I think do it, like focus on it, get good at it. I think there's room for that. There are some folks who are just engineers who have a problem and want to transform that problem into a solution for a customer or for themselves. They're not really interested in the middle part. I mean, they are, in as much that they want it to work well, they want it to perform well, they want it to pass the tests, but they also want to do a unit of work for their customers in a way that meets all the customers' needs. And so, what we are trying to do is, regardless of which path you take, we know there's going to be a human there who has to make a bunch of trade-offs, who has to think through whether this is the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, who has to think about what the customer's actually saying when they say a thing. I personally don't think there's a world in which we can divorce ourselves from all those tiny micro decisions that have to go into producing something that is of a decent enough quality and has enough trust that we can take ourselves out of it. So I definitely, as an engineer, and having had years of engineering and software engineering, want to continue to write code myself. I love that idea. But even as a coder and an engineer, I want to produce more things and I also want to write more code. So I definitely want to be in on, the design and the decisions and transforming that into something somebody's going to find useful.
Well, there's a whole side conversation to have about
Yeah.
what's going to happen. I personally, if asked, and I'll ask myself,
Yeah, please do.
I would argue that at some point there is not going to be a need for anybody to touch a keyboard,
Right.
and that's sort of sad in some ways and not in others. Now, the key question is when. Is that going to be in a year or is that going to be in 10 years?
Yeah.
I would venture to say that we're going to see a slope and then at some point a cliff where we just fall off that cliff and we start handing things over to the AI and hopefully that's as far as it goes. It doesn't start deciding what it wants.
Right. Right. I often try to remind myself and others as these things get super sophisticated and and really good at interpreting my intent. I have to kind of constantly remind myself that this is a probability engine, that it is also, it doesn't have an internal model of the world. It doesn't understand things in the way that we do. Um, and I'm assuming that's going to be the way for a while. I have no idea. I have no. I'm not. I don't train these things, so I have no idea what's coming. But I have seen, what is available to us here, and there definitely is a fundamental need for a human who understands a customer's deep need and can resonate with it and can translate that into something that either you or an agent or next line edit suggestions will help you craft and create.
Yes, and I don't want to get too far into my own tangent, but I will tell you I highly recommend. I'm reading a book called The Coming Wave by the inventor of DeepMind, and can't recommend it highly enough.
Oh,
And
awesome.
and he tackles the dangers and downside, and the possibilities and upside, and when it's coming, and the inevitability. And great book.
Yeah, I'll
But let
definitely
me bring you back
download it.
to Visual Studio.
Sure.
uh, you talked about having specialized in or focused on debugging
Yeah.
in your career, and I guess the question of I've heard you use the term reducing uncertainty
Yeah.
instead of find the bug more quickly. And
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was a very particular, and I use that turn of phrase very specifically and very deliberately. I think debugging is one of those skills you build up over time, and not everybody has a good handle on that to start with. And really, one of the things I think these tools should do isn't, we often talk about things in terms of abstraction layers and what we need to know and what we don't need to know. And there's a tendency to believe that we need to know less in this moment. Um, but I also think there's a moments and opportunities for us to be informed as a tool helps you solve a problem. So I don't want to be obscured necessarily from um, the solution and the details of the problem. And that's why I think debugging is so really, really important, because the goal of the debugging is to find out at the line of code, at the threads that were in conflict or in locked up, that you're going to a line of code to get a very specific detail or a call stack or information about where you are on a particular breakpoint. And to me, you want to fix the bug, but you want to understand why that bug existed in the first place. And for me, that's the tools I am most excited about are the tools that create more knowledge for the developer rather than creating just solutions for the developer. I want developers to be more informed. My concern, frankly, is that we kind of have bunches of solutions that we don't understand. And for me, that's not a solution. That's another layer of abstraction. So I love the debugging tools, and I love that they have a very specific task of helping you not just find bugs, but understand bugs. And that's what I think I was trying to say in that sentence.
Well, that raises the question about observability. Are
Mm.
there solutions or help through the agents for integrating some level of observability into your application?
Yeah, so I think what we're doing, and this is a little bit off my current specialty, but it's something I've been excited to kind of read more about, is the way in which Aspire's approaching this particular problem, where the whole kind of function, one of the functions of Aspire, is to increase the signals you are getting from your application and provide them in a way that is standard and that is readable. And one of the things I'm pretty excited about with the work that they're doing is how observability is baked into the framework and baked into the approach and the process. And so, in some ways, you're getting output that an agent, LLM, whatever it is, would understand can potentially understand and interpret on your behalf. So, yeah, observability is a big piece. So, for us to have kind of got ready with something like Aspire, um, really does unlock the ability to ask plain language questions about why
Mhm.
that particular value and that particular message and that log is in that way. It is. And so I've seen some really fascinating stuff come out of that team, not necessarily tied directly to Visual Studio, but the actual tool itself, the actual framework itself, is kind of enabling some scenarios that we're pretty excited about integrating ourselves.
Can you talk for just a minute about the role of skills and of tools
Yeah. Yeah.
within Visual Studio
Yeah.
and the difference between them as far as Visual Studio is concerned?
Yeah. Yeah. So we have been back in March, I think it was. We created created the opportunity for you to create skills, either as it's discoverable in GitHub/skills or .copilot skills. And what the skills are really, you are trying to let the agent know um, what smarts you want to apply to this particular problem. And for us, the agent story really works well when you can define what it is, and you define what it is through skills. So if I want to have some kind of specialty, whether that's test cases I want to run, and I know something specific about, for example, I do an open source project right now, and I might want folks to use an agent with a set of skills that I've developed that I think align with the way I want you to think about my blogging engine. And so I might say one of the principles we might have is, this is a no database solution. We want to just put things into XML files and that's it. And so a skill would naturally prompt you in that direction, rather than say, oh, if you can solve this problem with some small database sitting on the side. Well, fundamentally, that's not what I want. And so the skills allow me to ground an agent in a way of thinking and being. And then the second part you mentioned was the tools part, right? So I guess there are two sides of the way I think about it. We have this probability engine on the one side, and then which is incredibly helpful for what we think of as outside the box, maybe kind of just a wealth of knowledge that we can pull in. But then there are moments when I don't want you to guess, even if that's 98%. I want you to run a tool that will give me a observably correct and repeatedly correct outcome. And so in that regard, a set of tools that we know about, can describe, and can call and get the same outcome every single time is kind of like two parts of that. And I would kind of also say further, while tools is an official part of the kind of how we think about agents, we also have tools within Visual Studio. So I'm trying to make sure, us and our team are trying to make sure that all the tools that folks have got used to using in Visual Studio are thought of as tools by your agent in Visual Studio. So if you love the call stack, think of that as a tool that we can read and look. If you love, I'm just stuck here already. If you love breakpoints, like the debugger agent will use the tools to say, you actually need to stop at this line of code and look at the value at this particular line of code. And we use that, or if there's an exception that runs, the exception helper catches it. That's just a tool I can go get some more information for, because the exception helper caught the exception at the moment that I really want to analyze. So for me, the skills, the tools kind of make up the behaviors that I want to perform for a given set of tasks. And so that's why these kind of lead back again to the original question of agents. What we're doing with agents is just formed by the tools and the skills that we've been thinking about.
Outside of Visual Studio, tools are interacted with through MCP.
Yep.
Is that true for the tools you were talking about? And what about the ones that are integrated into Visual Studio?
Sure. Yeah, we definitely have MCP. I should have given a bit more focus on that, to be honest. So yeah, MCP is definitely a key part of the strategy for tools. What again we've been focused on for Visual Studio is some of the enterprise MCP governance questions, because obviously what we have is the tools themselves, especially ones that exist outside of Visual Studio, does create another surface that we want to make sure is safe for our customers, right? And so while, yes, you can use MCP, set up your MCP servers and use them in Visual Studio. It, we do also have some enterprise level governance of MCP usage. So some of our customers, or a lot of our customers, are might be constrained in what kinds of things they can and cannot use. If they're working for banks, or if they're working for healthcare, or if they're working in strict uh, environments, they may say, yeah, you can use these three MCP tools, but the others are out, right? So we also kind of provide the ability to have managed allowed lists set by admins. And so, yeah, MCPs are a critical part of the strategy for enabling tools for Visual Studio's agents.
Great. Before I let you go, can we look over the horizon a bit? Now,
Yeah.
normally I would say what's coming in a year, but let's try a month, 3 months, 6 months.
Yeah. Gosh, that's a tough question. So I think, yeah, I would say what I would love to see, maybe if I put it like that,
Yes.
um, I would love to see agents work together um, in a way that is that can be directed by us. Again, I think if I let an agent do a thing, naturally it typically leads into the next task. And what we find is that um, I have to now know about all the agents we just mentioned in the last half an hour, right? Um, and that's typically not something we've been used to. So it may be something that kind of catches on. If it doesn't, I want to make sure that we are prompting to say, hey, I see you've just finished debugging this, and I see you've added some unit tests. But if you kick on with the profiling agent at this point, you can have a real good sense of the speed and the performance of this particular application. Right now, I wonder if the array of agents is going to start getting out of hand. And so I
Mhm.
think I want to think about the next few months is how we can make sure that these suite of agents and tools, it's just really intuitive to use. And I'm not sure we're there yet. So I'm excited about the kind of next few months for the teams on how we make sure that we kind of fill the gaps that I think are going to be forming as we create even more tools and more agents for people. So, yeah.
We've talked about each agent in isolation.
Mm.
Is it possible within Visual Studio to have a multi agent situation where you can have one agent talking to another? And if so, what's the pattern that you like? Is it supervisor and down, or is it
Yeah.
collaborative, or how do you see that?
We're not there yet. We're not there yet. We um, we're not. We're just not there yet. I think if you are in the multi-agent business, you're probably better off at the CLI at this moment, at the Copilot with using the CLI tool, the Copilot CLI tool. But it is definitely something that we are thinking about and how we can best implement it. We've typically said. The we've made a bunch of decisions about the user interface, and that would be a fundamental shift in the way we think about a UI that is driven by you as the chief agent. Handing that to something else with multiple agents underneath it is would be a significant shift for us, and I think it's something that we obviously we've been talking about for a long time. Um, but I think it would be an interesting it would be a very interesting project for us to release. Let me say that.
Great. Great. This was terrific. This clarified a lot and gave
Awesome.
some really good insight in what's there and how to make best use of it. So I can't thank you enough.
This has been a fun conversation. Thank you for the questions and thanks for inviting me on. I've really enjoyed this.